Do you think there's a mass movement to stop Israel from wiping out Hamas? Because if it was about saving lives, if the goal is to save human lives, then why not protest about what was going on in Syria? Why not protest about the what the Iranian women were going through? Are UN countries and pro-Palestinian activists using all their global human rights connections, whatever they may have, in order to save Hamas from extinction? What do you think about that?
So, the issue has always been, there's been a severe inconsistency in what we've seen coming out of the West in general. And I think it's very important to note that the West isn't the only person that's going to sort of uh, dampen Israel's military campaign. The pressures on Israel come from different sectors, but also remember, a lot of what is said in public directly contradicts what's said in private. I know for a fact, for example, Saudi Arabia is like all gung ho about Israel going in on Gaza and finishing off Hamas. They've just asked the Israelis in public, they're quite critical of Israel. In private, they're extremely supportive of Israel. They've just asked the Israelis to keep the body count down to a minimum so that it doesn't embarrass them. Right? I think a lot of countries are sending out that message to Israel. Number one. Number two, let's talk about the public aspect of this because I think that's what most of our audience ends up seeing. Now, what happens out here is this has been a particularly toxic byproduct of intersectionality, where, if you are gay, you have to support Black Lives Matter. If you are gay, you have to support gender change surgery and this whole nonsense about gender ideology. And if you're all both of these, then you have to support Palestine somehow. Right. Now, understand what the rationale behind all of this is. The left thrives on creating uh, disaffected parties. They need to create rage in order to create international revolution. Revolution is not possible without rage. Rage has to be generated. All right. And so, what these people do is they create these so called intersectional groupings which are so farcical. Hamas throws homosexuals off tower blocks the way ISIS did, and yet you'll find queers for Palestine. It's a bit like chickens for KFC. There's actually a meme doing the round saying thank you Benjamin Netanyahu because now Hamas can't execute us anymore because all the high rises are being flattened. Right now, this has been a problem that has been pointed out. This is not new. People assume this is new because they don't realize that this is the latest phase of Marxo communism. But this actually started during the Russian Revolution itself. If you go back to the Russian Revolution, all the language used about bourgeois oppressors and feudal oppressors in Russia was never used about the much more feudal and much more bourgeois oppressors in Central Asia. Far from it, they were all, fated as oppressed minorities who needed understanding and sympathy. And the moment the communists came to power, what did they do? The first people that they executed, even before they finished executing all the czarists, was to go and execute all the Islamists in Central Asia and completely wipe the slate clean. On the other side, what happens in Iran is that the Islamists come to power in 1979, and what do? They kill off all the communists in Mashhad first, even before they kill off all the monarchists. So it's a very. I'm very surprised that people don't understand what this intersectionality playbook is. Now, why is Islamism and leftism so compatible in opposition, but never in power? Because they both understand political power very, very well. They're both extremely ruthless. And once they come to power, they realize the only person who can understand them at a theoretical level and destroy each other at a physical level is the other. Right? So they're always allies out of power. They're very strong allies out of power because they march in lockstep and they are each other's worst enemies when they come to power. This is number one. Why is that? Because Islam is a congregational religion. You can pray 5 times a day, but every Friday you are required to come out to the mosque. So the congregational power of a mullah or a muezzin is almost institutionalized. You cannot be a Muslim and not go to a mosque. Wherever you are, at least on Friday, you have to go to the mosque to attend prayer. And congregation, along with joblessness, is a very, very potent combination. Because joblessness, economic deprivation, plus congregationism it's almost a riot waiting to happen. Okay. Leftists are very similar. Why do they have a protest culture? It isn't because they like to protest to everything. And most communists are usually, these kind of quasi-employed people. Services, essentially, these days, because we've moved towards services, you don't have blue-collar factory laborers anymore. If you look at the employment, the sector-wise breakup of any developed country, it's only 20 to 25% working in manufacturing. The rest is in services, about 70 to 80% in services. And what happens out there is you're largely jobless, because services are really, they're not really white collar. You have the delusion of being white collar, but you're mostly quasi blue collar, with a lot more spare time now on your hands. And so, what communists do by creating protests is they replicate this congregationalism of Islam, where you're brought out onto the streets and you get used to congregating and protesting. They can literally generate, because it's conditioned into you, they can literally generate protests on the ground, essentially create overnight shock troops to go around, rioting, ransacking, doing whatever when required, when whipped up into a frenzy. And cumulatively, what ends up happening is that this is a very, very potent, two rioting wings that can come together and weaponize each other in sync to magnify each other's abilities. One becomes a megaphone to the other. They also have institutionalized online mobs like this. So the congregationalism is something they understand very, very well. And they've also taken this, projected this onto the internet and social media. So you'll find a lot of the information saturation. It doesn't matter if it's fake or real. They just saturate the waves. So for example, when you had the 40 babies beheaded story come out, I never bought it. But the whole of the media was saturated, social media at least, was saturated with demands, show us proof. More than the 40 babies beheaded story, it was 80-90% of my timeline was show us proof. This is all lies. Clearly a congregationalized online mob. But when Hamas's health ministry puts out this thing saying 8,000 Gazans are dead so far, none of this 80% that demanded proof for 40 babies beheaded are demanding proof to show us, show us the bodies. They just take it lock, stock, barrel, and it's 8,000 people killed. So, it's a very, very potent force. And, it keeps going back to what Lenin said. Every idea is worth 1,000 pages of theory. Every piece of news, fake or real, is worth 1,000 tweets. They saturate your timeline. And so you simply cannot filter out what is real from what is false. And sheer probability dictates that you will fall for their narrative over some other narrative.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.